the recording.
Okay.
Right. Please go ahead. Jimmy,
So, what are some common ways used to find missing children other than Amber and Silver Alert?
So we use Project Lifesavers if they're a client, which they have to be approved and requested, and there's certain criteria that they meet. And for example, certain special needs students might be required, or children, I should say, or even adults. And this equipment that we have use radio frequencies to track their locations. Another thing that we use is we can use the contacting extra eyes. It's like to be on the lookout to any county personnel that's got a radio with them, and we can put out a lookout so we can help look for the child that might be missing. The news media is a great source because you basically try to put it out to as many people as you possibly can to help them, our community, to locate someone that might be missing. So it works for children as well as for adults. Another thing that's not using technology would be actually the use of a dog that could potentially track.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Siddha, you want to go next?
Gladly. So, what are the shortcomings of the current alerting mechanisms that are used for search and rescue, including other ones that are not used for search and rescue?
The technology is always improving. If you're referring to technologies, one of the things that we could use would be drones. So it could work off FLIR. It can work off just the regular cameras, a high definition camera from certain altitudes. It helps clear areas where it's rough terrain. It's easier to use a drone to fly above and cover more territory than it would be for somebody on foot. But we would use that in addition to people on feet because you can also miss things as well. You might not recognize it from the sky or on a camera as you actually would in person, but you could quickly observe a lot of it or cover a lot of area quickly using a drone. So that's something that's definitely has come a ways. We use equipment, for example, we could use ATVs to cover some equipment through as well to go through the trails to help us cover as much territory as we can in a quick time set. One of the things that we have work against us though sometimes is and sometimes we suspend search and rescue efforts so we don't lose any rescue or search parties is we'll wait until daylight. So we try to use daylight to our advantage whenever we possibly can. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Mahima?
Okay, so I'll ask the next question. What alerting mechanisms were used like before the production of Amber Alerts and Silver Alerts? Like any like non-technological alerting systems?
Well, I don't know if you guys have ever heard the tones that go off, the emergency tones that what do they call it? The emergency broadcast system. Have you seen that on the TV before? Usually they test it about once a month, maybe, and it comes across and it makes a noise and alerts people through the TV. They used to use the radios for that as well. They don't do that anymore. They'll use like newscasters to get on the radio and make announcements to individuals in reference to that. Another thing they would do for us is the radios. The radios have been along for a long time, but even prior to the radios, though, they would use telephones. And telephones, we'd have call boxes to go to call boxes to get information to help us look out for individuals or certain lookouts in general for our safety or the safety of the community. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
So the next following question is, what technology would you think would make your job easier?
More education of the community and us to do a better job into utilizing our community because people are our best assets. Technology is wonderful and great, but we still need the human element, the people, to help take that information that's being retrieved and put it in the terms or and uses that we can use it and apply it. So being in the community, being involved with our community is probably the best way that sometimes we probably need to get back to that a little bit, is because our next door neighbors know more than just us. So if we're able to employ them to work with us together, we get stronger as a community. So that would be the thing that I would think that we can do really, really good on, as far as just improving our technology. Technology has come a long ways. It's going to continue. You and your team, if you're into the technology world, you guys are going to take the technology that's here today and expand it beyond our belief. And I encourage you to do that because technology is something that we need to embrace, but it still will never replace that human element. So even though I have some really great movies I like iRobot and stuff with Will Smith, it's a good one, but it's kind of a little bit of an idea about that.
Yep, we have seen that, or at least I
So
have.
I like it. It's one of my favorite movies.
Right, who's next?
What non-technology items, like other than humans, might can make your job easier?
Other than technology, if we all could get along, that would be wonderful. Um, the same thing that your parents probably tell you if you have younger or older brothers or sisters. Sometimes if you don't fight, just get along. I'm sure we've all heard those statements before. I've heard that when I was growing up. That would be a nice thing. It would be nice if our society would go along with the laws that are passed, and it wouldn't. Therefore, it would make our job a lot easier. Um, that would be one way. Other than the technology, though, if there's more of us out there, if we were able to provide more officers out there to help the community, um, at times we might have to assist and enforce laws. But if we didn't have to do that and we literally could be there if we were needed to help in emergencies and not because of people hurting anyone, but just because emergencies happen, for example, a car accident or something. But if there's anything we can do to help prevent that, um, one of the reasons I work in the schools because I believe in prevention through education. I think that's a very, very valuable. And if we can do more of that and get back to some of those basic core concepts, it would probably reduce the need for us to have the technology in our field of work.
I really like what you said, Deputy Apple. Prevention through education.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
All right, what else?
Have you ever like dealt with or ever like been just like a little bit involved in an amber or silver alert case? And if so, how was your experience like?
Okay, I was actually involved in when I worked as a detective, I was involved in a child abduction. I basically got about 4 hours of sleep over like a 72-hour period. So we used the Amber Alert on that. That was not the reason we were able to successfully recover the child. The child was recovered successfully and reunited with the parents. But what we had to do is we really utilized the media. So we put it out a lot, hoping, and we had certain ideas where their individuals might be going, and we just kind of flooded that individual using their phone, um, contacting family members that would end up contacting them because we had an idea who it might be. But a lot of it was the media. If every time that you're driving around and you're on the radio or you see something and you're seeing that they're looking for you, you're going to look over your shoulder every time you see a police car. And you can only hide for so long before you're able to be located. And so, as long as we're patient, but I worked long and a lot of long hours. Like I said, I got 4 hours of sleep probably over a 72-hour period of time. So, because it was important to me to help find that child because every minute that children are away from where they should be is traumatizing for them. So if it was my child, I'd want that done for me. So whenever I work for someone or work for our community, I work as if I was the one that was actually the victim. It wasn't just the child, but it's the family that is with the child as well. So that's how I position myself is to work for that individual as I would want done for me.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, Anish, we see that you just joined in. Do you have any questions?
Um, you hear me? I've been having tech issues this entire time.
Okay, that's fine. If you, yeah, if you have anything, if you want to type in the chat, then one of us can ask.
Yeah, I don't really have anything.
Okay.
So, Deputy Apple, I mean, before I do have one or two questions, but before that, does anyone else uh, have anything else?
Yes, so you mentioned the child goes through some trauma effects, so could you please tell us some of them?
It's kind of like separation anxiety. If you could imagine that someone would come into your home and take you out of your home and keep you away from your parents and stuff like that, it's traumatizing. So it would be for, it would make you nervous. You wouldn't feel safe in your home. You wouldn't feel safe when you went about. You would always probably want to have your parents there with you because your parents are your, like your safety net, even though you get mad at them sometimes, probably. Um, they're the ones who are going to make you feel safe. So it's traumatizing for anyone to be going have to go through that, whether a child or an adult. And so it takes time for them to maybe get comfortable in and back in the community or back in their home, or even in their own bedroom, because that's where they felt victimized. And so it's going to take some time for them to come over that and to adjust.
Thank you, sir.
Mhm.
So, how would you educate the public about like missing people in general? Because you're talking about public education. How?
So we would go to basically where we might have like certain instances or certain high risk. For example, we can use a elderly home, for example, where people have a tendency of sometimes they might just wander off and get lost because they might not go out a lot, and the world around us changes a lot, especially as we get older. Things kind of build up so quickly that we might not remember the way that it is now. We may remember more the way it was before when we were out and about more often. So they could easily get lost. So we could always go there and we can speak to them in reference to what they can do, the facility, if they're staying in a nursing home, for example, or assisted living home. We can speak to them in reference to what things that they can do to improve the safety for their people who live there, the residents that live there. Um, Neighborhoods would be another thing. We can make sure they're well lit so people can see where they're going around so they don't get lost. Paths, bike paths, and stuff like that. We can educate people that there's certain times of day where maybe it's not a good time to go out because they can get lost because the paths are dark and they can wander around and accidentally become lost. And therefore, not anything on purpose, no malicious intent, just lost their way, kind of. And so they would need to have some assistance with that. So we can try to improve to educate our community, and again, we all do that together to make it safer for everyone.
How would you educate them?
A lot of it is getting the time, getting the right people to connect with, having people have the time to do it, be willing to adjust and be open-minded. I think sometimes as humans we are kind of get complacent and we're like, oh, we don't need that. We're got it good instead of reviewing. They might say, well, we already have a plan in place, and the last time that plan's probably looked at was probably several years ago. So like every year at school, for example, we review certain plans every year, even though they've already been done, just to see if there are ways that we can improve it so it doesn't get stale. So in law enforcement, for example, is I can get a case, I can work on it for a year. I might not solve it um, because I'm looking at it from one perspective. I'm not looking at it very open or objectively. And so I might have to give it to another detective to maybe look at it from a different angle. And they might see something that I don't, and not because I was doing anything incorrect or wrong, just because they took a different avenue for it. And that's what we get stronger together when we work as a team. Kind of like you guys. If one of you decided that you wanted to do everything yourself, you're missing out on the perspective of your teammates who can give you a broader view so you're not so narrow minded and get focused on doing it just one way.
So, Deputy Apple, I had a question about something that you said, right? You mentioned about different ways in which we can help out. So, as a community, visiting different nursing homes and so forth. Uh, Flipping back, right, from law enforcement perspective, um, for situations like missing people, whether they are children or old people, um, or people who need help, like mentally challenged and so forth. In your mind, what are the things that could be improved or that can be, that you think sometimes, you know god, I wish we had this, or if only we had something like, or we could do something like that. So in your mind, what are the gaps that you see currently that can help out, uh, by making these missions a success?
Um, well, people are like to, and I'm one of those that we like to have that free will, our freedom to kind of do what we want and not have to feel like we have someone always watching us, as part of your freedom and being able to go and do as you want, free will. So one of the things you could be is, there's like GPS units in your phone. So if you're able to kind of know where your location is, it's usually likely that your phone company will be able to know where you're at. And so those are certain things that we can use in law enforcement to help track somebody as well. Um, we can always, the technology is out there. It's kind of like you have the chips for lost animals that if you take them and you have them, if you take an animal, you can take them to a shelter or to a vet, they can be scanned if they've been chipped, and it'll tell you where they live, all their contact information. But obviously you have to have a chip surgically implanted in you. That is something that could be done, which would be very, very easy to track people and find people. Um, but our society is not ready for that, and I don't think that we need that, um, in my mind, that we don't need to get to that extreme. But that's something though that if that was in place, it definitely would make it very, very easy to locate people and find out, where they're at, as well as to find out um, where they live and other contact information and contact their loved ones to let them know that we've located them.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So go ahead, Jimmy, you had something.
Yeah, so do you think that facial recognition would be helpful in your search for the missing person?
Do I think facial recognition?
Yes, I think his question is, technologies like facial recognition technologies. Do you think that they will be helpful in search for missing people?
Um, yes. So one of the biggest things is it's not just having the technology; it's using the expense of the keeping it up to date and putting the technology out. So when you're talking about certain technologies, it's very, very expensive. For example, something very basic would be a metal detector that people want in all public buildings, including schools. You still have to have personnel or people to man those things to address certain glitches that might be in it or to recognize and interpret the information being given. Um, do I think that would be helpful? The answer, yes. Um, the expense and the necessity of it, I think, is where you have to kind of start weighing is if we really feel economically, if it's economically sound. It's kind of like you're getting a house or you're looking at a car, or those would be kind of examples. Is like you can have the nicest and all the most up to date things in it, but it comes at an expense. It doesn't mean the other things won't work. It just when you start going high end and you want all those things, it's expensive. Um, and your technology today, for example, if you were to go out and buy a computer and you were to get the top of the line computer today, a couple of months from now, it's not going to be the top of the technology world anymore. It's going to kind of start showing its age because other places, other computers have gotten better. So technology is always changing. So when you get to certain points, it's like once you get to there, it's okay, it's great right now. When you first start looking at it, it's really great, but then when you actually start to apply it and start purchasing that stuff, it quickly becomes dated. So, for example, with our police cars, we only get about 4 years out of them, and then we have to get new cars because of miles, and just your own personal cars. The technology is always changing. You have cars nowadays, the Teslas, for an example, are able to use technology to get them from point A to point B without actually having to drive it yourself. Um, and that's another aspect that that might be going to even police cars, where we won't have to drive our car, or something else can do, and they'll give us something else to do when the car is moving. I mean, who knows?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
All right, I know we are almost out of the time. I believe I have one last. Oh, actually, we do have a question from Anisha as well. Is it true that in most cases the victim knows the kidnapper? If so, will the victim feel scared when the people with the people they know?
The
Uh,
victim feels scared. Um, each case is different and unique. Um, so, is it true that most know the kidnapper? They might not know that that's the person that necessarily kidnapped them at the time. They might know later. It's usually the kidnapper has done their research, or has knows who the person is, um, and has done it that way. But that's not always the case. So, and will the victims feel scared when with the people they know? They're going to probably feel uncomfortable because it's not the normal, it's not the norm. So anytime that we as an individual are outside of our norm, it feels uncomfortable, and maybe some in being scared to some extent. Um, and that could go both ways. After a while, they're going to get scared, and then they might learn to adapt, and it becomes the new norm for them. So sometimes when you take someone who's been in a situation like that and you take them back to where they should have been, they have to adjust there. So they might be scared again because now they have to adjust to their new norm. It's kind of like if you were to take a dog who is lost and you take them with you, the dog is not going to really know who you are and is going to be scared and timid. And then after a while, the dog will adjust and then we get to know you and it'll trust you, even though that you may could have done something else and taken the dog back to the owners. But then if you were to take that dog several years down the road and take them back with its original owners, it's got to adjust. It's got to go back to another new normal again. And that would just be its habitat, and it's what its surroundings are and what it was used to. The living person or living animals, habitats change, and so it's going to be an adjustment. So the answer to that is yes.
I know, Sira, you mentioned that you have a question.
Yes. So
Okay.
is Loudon, like our area, or just the whole of Loudoun County, is it like a hotspot for missing cases?
No, it's not. It's a rarity actually for that to happen. A lot of times we have missing children. It's because they run away. They leave on their own, and so they're listed as missing. You might see some of those reports. They're considered missing children. The majority of them return, but they leave on their own, because they think they know more than their parents. They're mad at their parents because their parents put boundaries on them, and they don't like it, so they think they can go out into the real world and take care of everything themselves and not have to listen to anybody. And as you get older, you're going to think that you won't have to listen to anybody. And the reality is, the older you get, the more people you actually have to listen to. Um, so when I was growing up, all I had to do was listen to my parents, my teachers when I was at school. And then as you get older, you have bosses and they have bosses, and you have the people you're working for. For example, you as the students, I'm working for you. So I have to listen to your needs and what you may do so I can assist you in what you need as well. So as you get older, you actually have more responsibilities and you're having to listen to more people, which is some of the difficult things that we have to do as young people. And it gets more difficult as you get older.
I think that's well said. That's well said, Deputy Apple. um, All right, I think we are almost out of time. Mahima, did you have a question that you wanted to ask before we close?
Yes, I did. It's like a quick question. It was like similar to another question. If you had the ability to improve the current technologies to locate missing people, what modifications would you make?
So I think that technology that we, I believe in the free will. Like I believe people should be able to go and do what they want, um, as long as they're not harming anyone else. And I don't think that's necessarily the government needs to know everybody's whereabouts. So that's kind of like a trick question. The technology is there where the government, because the government's going to have to oversee projects like that and make sure everyone does it. I just don't think as a society that we need to do that, and I'm not really for that. But it would be basically putting a chip or a bar on people that you could scan them and know where everything's at all times. And I just don't think as a society that that's one is that we need to get to that point. I hope not. Um, and I think that we just need to do a good job as a humankind, just human kindness, and just do the right things for humanity, which is to be kind to your neighbor. Um, but to track people, that would be probably the technology already exists. It's just basically being able to apply it. Um, so it's there, it could be done. I personally don't think that's something that as a government though that we want to do. Does that help you?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Uh, all right, so before we wrap up, Deputy Apple, I have one last quick, hopefully quick question. Um, from your perspective, or rather, we as citizens, right? What could we do to help out in terms of locating the missing children? I'm just going to say children, but the same thing applies to others as well. That can help them locate faster.
Well, it's receiving the information quickly. So one of the things would be is to I'm guilty of it. I'm not big into social media, but social media is obviously is the way that we are in society as far as retrieving information at our fingertips. Twitter, Facebook are applications that the sheriff office uses that anything that needs to be out there for the community, we put it out there through the social media sites, and that's probably the fastest way of receiving it, as well as for you to pass it on. So when you receive information, it's remember we're trying to inform as many people as we possibly can. Um, and if everybody takes that information and forwards it to 5 other people, that's a lot of people. It's pretty quick. It spreads to help us locate individuals quicker than if we're trying to do it the old-fashioned way by trying to send a smoke signal.
Okay, okay. I think that's very helpful. I am done from my side, and I think we are out of our 30-minute slot as well.
Okay,
So, so thank you so much, Deputy Apple. This was very helpful from for us, and hopefully we will have some nice reports and items that we can share with you in future. Like by future, I mean in the coming months
great,
for our project.
great. If there's anything else I can do to help, just let me know. Okay.
Thank you so much, team. Do we want to say thanks?
Thank you, WG Apple.
You got